Mr Bojangles is a beautiful, bittersweet song, still in regular rotation by jazz and country singers alike. But the man in the song was not the original Mr Bojangles, and the story stretches back over 100 years and touches some of the most important people in American entertainment.
I knew a man, Bojangles, and he danced for you in worn out shoes.
Most of us have largely forgotten Bill Bojangles Robinson. He was a tap dancer in the early 20th century and one of the biggest stars in America, and probably the world. It's hard to overstate how important he was, especially in New York City. He would often perform alongside Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Fred Astaire, and he was good friends with Bob Hope, John DiMaggio, and Jackie Robinson, just to name a few. Now, Robinson is best known for his cinema work, but he made his name in the pre-World War I vaudeville circuit. He was one of the first minstrel performers who, on account of being black, didn't wear blackface. This is an example of his signature stare dance, and apparently this was developed as a way to distract and get away from police when he was a kid. And this dance featured in several of his 4 films with Shirley Temple, which interestingly was the first interracial dance couple on screen, and that was very controversial at the time. The Bojangles nickname apparently comes from Bill's childhood in Richmond, Virginia. The story goes that Bill stole a beaver-skinned hat from a hat maker called Leon Bouillasson. The children used to mispronounce that name, Bojangles. So that nickname got transferred to Bill Robinson as a way of teasing him for stealing such an obnoxious hat. It's also around this time that Bill Robinson claims to have invented the word copacetic. Copacetic means that everything is good. Bill Robinson would be the one to popularise this term in the early 20th century. Whether or not Robinson actually invented it, or it was just part of the slang at the time, is anyone's guess. And despite Bill Robinson's place in history, Mr Bojangles wasn't written about him.
Mr Bojangles, Mr Bojangles, Mr Bojangles.
The song Mr Bojangles is a waltzy cowboy ballad originally written and recorded by Jeff Walker in 1968, almost 20 years after Bill Robinson died. The song was quickly covered by people like John Denver and Neil Diamond, but the breakthrough hit came from the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band a couple of years later. Walker had written the song about a homeless street performer that he met in a New Orleans prison. Mr Bojangles was a name that he would use to hide his identity from the police. They got to talking with the other prisoners, and at one point Mr Bojangles told a story about his dog who had passed away, swiftly bumming everyone out. To lift everyone's spirits, Mr Bojangles got up and danced across the cell, and that brief interaction was enough to give Walker what he needed to write the song. Being a dancer, this Mr Bojangles probably did get his nickname from Bill Robinson. Now that's the core story, but there's one more link between these two Mr Bojangles that I find fascinating, and that link is Sammy Davis Jr.
I remember saying to Buddy Rich, playing with Tommy Dorsey's orchestra, I said, how do you do that? And he went, well, I'll show you. You go like this. He said, try it. And I went, he said, give me back the sticks.
Now, Sammy Davis Jr. had a storied and sometimes scandalous life that I'm going to completely gloss over, but what's important is that he's the singer most associated with the song Mr Bojangles. Sammy wasn't the first jazz-ish singer to record the song. Nina Simone did a great version just a couple of years earlier, but Sammy Davis Jr. became a huge star and made this a feature part of his performance for decades to come. But here's the link between the two. Sammy Davis Jr. not only sung the song that Jeff Walker wrote, he was a good friend of Bill Bojangles Robinson. So to summarise, we've got the original Mr Bojangles, the tap dancer Bill Robinson. We've got the real Mr Bojangles, the street performer from New Orleans. And then we've got the new Mr Bojangles, the Sammy Davis Jr. Now that's not to mention the poor hatter from the late 1800s in Richmond, Virginia, whose contribution to this story was that he was stolen from.
Mr Bojangles, Mr Bojangles, Mr Bojangles dance.
Like the song, the story of all 3 Mr Bojangles ends with mixed emotions. Bill Robinson, despite earning millions during his career, died without a cent in 1949, partly due to a lifelong gambling habit, and partly due to another habit that saw him give money to anyone who needed it. He was adored by fellow performers. His Harlem funeral was presided over by Ed Sullivan and featured a who's who of Broadway. But he copped flack from the black community. He was often called an Uncle Tom, which is an old term to describe a black person pandering to white people. As for Sammy Davis Jr., his life was maybe even more complicated. He was also called an Uncle Tom early on, but he was slammed later for endorsing Tricky Dick Richard Nixon for president. That's despite Davis being a friend and benefactor of Martin Luther King during the Civil Rights Movement. Davis did come to regret the whole Nixon situation for what it's worth. But Davis also received a lot of vitriol and at times death threats from the white community, mostly to his marriages to white women. In particular, his marriage to Swedish-born actor Mae Britt was reportedly what caused John F. Kennedy, of all people, to refuse to let Sammy Davis Jr. sing at his inauguration. As for the Mr Bojangles that Jeff Walker met, he was a nameless, homeless street performer in 1960s New Orleans, which doesn't set you up for a long and prosperous life. But here's the thing. The song doesn't hit like an emotional ton of bricks because of any one person that it's about. Mr Bojangles at its core is a song about joy and hope in the face of tragedy in a deeply unjust world. And no doubt, Bill Robinson and Sammy Davis Jr. both experienced that during their lifetime. But it's a universally human concept. Jeff Walker even said that even though the lyrics are about a man he met in a New Orleans jail, he used to sing it about a wide variety of people that he met throughout his career. And while we can't know for sure, there's no doubt that Sammy Davis Jr. from time to time would sing the song while thinking of his good friend Bill Bojangles Robinson. Mr Bojangles isn't a song about a person, it's a song about people.
I heard someone ask him, please.
Music for this episode came from my very talented friend Michael Howell. I'll leave links below to his version of Mr Bojangles, as well as his YouTube channel, which is full of really great music. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Hopefully, I'll see you next time.